Town Board meeting, Thursday, July 24th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the roll call.
Chairman Merrick,
Present.
Supervisor Racky,
Here.
Supervisor Wolf,
Here.
Supervisor Durr,
Here.
and Supervisor Fisher.
Here. And pledge of allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, have we met all of the requirements of the open meetings law?
Yes, we have.
And we can begin with citizens' comments. Anybody?
Good evening, Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827, Milky Way Road. There was one item I was going to talk on. About the agenda. You understood, okay. The other thing was the ambulance fee that I emailed everybody about, and I wanted to touch on that even though it's not on the agenda and give you my perspective. I know it's a real feel-good to try to help people out. It's not something I support. I haven't supported it from way back when it was instituted here. And it never seemed to have come up ever until right after the latest ordinance that was instituted. And then in December of 13, I guess, or something. Anyway, when I think about it, the comparison to the hospital, I don't think is apropos. I talked to the hospital. They're a not-for-profit, and they're required by federal law to do this. And the money comes out of other people's fees. So we're all kind of paying for what the other people get discounted. The other thing from a town perspective that I just don't think that it works that well is that I don't understand how we make the distinction between an ambulance run and anything else. I mean, if somebody's disadvantaged, I understand, but let's suppose we have a new ordinance about grass and we have to cut their grass. Are we going to offer them a 65% or an 85% or a 100% discount on that fee because they've got a letter from Pro Healthcare? I just don't see the difference. And I understand that the town's not going to always get paid. I just think you go ahead and bill it. The party that's doing the billing is getting a percentage of the take. They're highly motivated. And when you can't get it, like anybody else, you write it off. So that's why I don't support it. I've seen various votes change from people up here. But when next time it comes up and up for discussion, I'm going to be real interested to see how it goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Jenna Glade, South 31, West 26111, Sunset Drive. At the last meeting, we had an opinion on the town's financial statement from our new auditor, Baker Tilly. It should be noted the auditor said the transition went smoothly and there were only minor issues because of the staff turnover during the year. It should be noted they did not run into anything that their discussions with the current board assumed they would. It should be noted they found the town to be in a very good financial position, and any additional procedure to remove the disclaimer from the former auditor would only benefit Baker Tilly and would cost the town an additional $5,000. As a layperson, not a CPA, this opinion means to me that the former town board left the town in a great financial position with no outstanding debt and a surplus. It means to me that there was no misappropriation of funds, as was suggested. It means to me that there was no $600,000 missing from the budget, as was suggested. It means that members of the staff who went into the software were there for legal and rightful reasons. It means to me that the former town board acted only for the welfare of the town and its citizens. It should be noted that any further nefarious suggestions concerning the town's previous finances would be egregious and ridiculous.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Millette Krzyżanowski, West 254 South 4360 Pin Oak Lane. I also am concerned about the 2012 audit. I'm glad to see it's on the agenda this evening, that you're going to discuss it, because my concern was it was just going to have an asterisk after it, saying that there was a change of leadership, therefore no one will formally accept the results. What procedures have you established to follow if a chairman is not re-elected? Elections are held in April, and we are in July, and we're first getting the 2013 audit results. So this I'm surprised it hasn't happened previously, but it could potentially happen every time a chairperson is not re-elected. That says, as Mr. Merrick did, I wasn't here, I didn't have anything to do with it, I'm not signing it. I think it would behoove all of you to pass an ordinance or a requirement, forgive me for not knowing the proper term of what you do, but a rule that says all audits have to be completed by March 31st of each year, with your fiscal year ending December 31st would give you 3 months to have the books closed and the audit completed. Therefore, when the elections are held in April, there's no issue of who's going to sign and accept the results that the auditors give you. The fiscal year would be closed out in a 3-month period. I know businesses can do it. I really don't see why the town can't do it if you're all up to date on your books. It should be a doable thing, and if it was by ordinance that everybody going forward had to do this, it would solve the whole problem that you're dealing with for 2 years here. And so I really think it would be a wise decision on your part to take some action of that sort and get this problem eliminated completely, so we don't have to have all of this bickering and discussion and accusations, and the whole, the town has to endure all of this for 2 years. And it wasn't necessary, because if you had the rules in place and you followed the rules, it would be a non-issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Then we can move on forward to approving the minutes for June 26th and July 10th. Is there any objection to taking them together? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes for July 26, 2014, and, June 26, 2014, and July 10, 2014.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. On to 6, current business. We'll start with countywide digital radio equipment loan presented by Chief Buchholz. Good evening.
Good evening. I put together an option in cases, we've applied for the grant for our radio equipment. We're still waiting to hear on those grants, as well as everyone else in Waukesha County. No one has heard yet of anything in Waukesha County. We are looking at turning over to the new digital system, yet it's still pretty much on track for implementation the 4th quarter of this year. Once the county does flip over, we're going to be expected to have our radio equipment in place, or we will have no communications. Pretty much that simple. So as an option, in case we don't get the grant, I've put this proposal together that was offered to everyone in the county, by the county. They are lending funds to municipalities at 1.5% simple interest for a 2-year period, up to $200,000 per municipality until the $2 million allowance is used up. My conversation with Andy Felke last week said there are still sufficient funds available. My request tonight, or my proposal tonight to you, was to approve potentially entering into an agreement to borrow the money, if we need to, from the county, in the amount of $120,000 to finish off the balance of what we would have, based on the $200,000 we have in the budget already, and then 120 would finish the project, so that we had an alternative in case we do not get the grant. We have a method to purchase the radios that we need. The documents that I believe the clerk prepared for you are drafts from the county that have the information for the town for the $120,000 proposal. Like I said, you don't have to execute the loan if we get the grant. You don't have to take the money, just leave it with the county and our loan's paid back instantly. But it's an option in case we don't get the grant by the time that we have to get radios.
It is my understanding, based on conversations with the town attorney, that if we were to pay, if we went to the general fund and paid for the radio equipment in full, and then we ended up getting the grant, we would have to return the grant money because we would have already paid for the system. Is that your understanding also?
That's absolutely true. If we purchase before the grant is awarded, we forfeit the grant.
Okay.
The purchase has to be made after the grant's awarded if we want to use the grant. And that's why we're trying to hold off as long as we can, hopefully here on the grant. The FEMA grants last year, some of them weren't awarded until early this year. So they even went past the January, February mark. So we have no idea when the federal government's going to come forward with their grants.
Well, if we purchase with the grant, if we purchase with the loan money, we still made the purchase.
Yes, but we haven't paid for it because there's a loan on it.
That's not what you said.
No, that's not true. No, if we move ahead and buy the radios, even with the loan money, we forfeit the grant. This is
So
an
once we
option.
make the purchase, we're
Right.
on the hook for the loan.
Right, what I'm not saying is to go out and purchase now. What I'm saying is make the request to the county so that we have some funds locked in. So later in the year, if we don't have that grant, we have to make our purchase. We've got an option.
Okay, that was not the way that Attorney Macy relayed that to me. He said that if there was a loan against it, that we could use the grant money against the loan, but not. no
That is
other way.
not true.
Okay.
If we make the purchase before the grant's awarded, we forfeit the grant, no matter how we pay for it.
I have a question, looking at this, you indicated, I mean, their annual percentage rate is the 1.5% simple interest. I mean, that's obviously a very low rate of interest, but the question that I've gotten, I don't know whether Kathy can answer this or not, but I mean, we do have town money, town resources. Do we have any idea what kind of a rate of return we're presently getting on any of the money we've got invested? And if we don't know, the answer is okay. So we could say don't know. I mean, for me, unless there's other considerations such as this forfeiture type of thing or what or not, if those issues aren't there, to me this is a pretty, it seems to be simple thing to take a look at. If we can get a better rate of return on that than the cash assets the town has got invested, then it makes sense to me to take this loan. If we're not getting a 1.5% return on the money we've got invested, then I don't see the purpose in taking the loan. I'd prefer to take it out of cash reserves. Maybe that's overly simplistic, but at least that's what's going through my head.
And we are not getting 1.5. We're the CDs that we have are someplace between 1/4% and in that area.
So, and that's kind of my,
We wouldn't have to take it out of our CDs. We could keep our CDs. We have money in our account, our general account, that we could take it out that is not in a CD. So we would not have to pull any money out of the CD to do this.
to make up $120,000. So again, then I guess I'll put it back just for other people for discussion purposes. What would be the logic or the justification for taking the loan if we had got ready access to those cash reserves and we would be paying back more? I mean, I know it's not a huge sum of money, but it's $1,800 in interest the first year and $900, $2,700 unless we can exceed that in interest earnings on our investment with the cash we've got. Why would we want to do it? I pose that as a simple question.
So back to the implementation. This affects anybody who utilizes WCC, right?
Correct.
So really, we're the customer of WCC. And WCC is making the change, right?
Actually, you're a member of WCC.
Okay, a member is even better position to be in. So if this affects every community that's a member of WCC, and every town that's and village, I don't think there's a city that's a part of it, is there?
City of Brookfield.
Well, okay, so then every member is in the same situation. And most, if not all of them, are sitting waiting for this grant.
Many of them are, yes.
So what steps are we taking to tell WCC to wait until the grants come through? One way or the other, so at least we know.
I can't answer your question directly.
Fair enough.
Because I know they're under some federal regulations, the way they put their plan together, they have to implement at certain times and activate licensures at certain times. So I can't even truthfully answer your question.
But if enough of us band together and say we're not gonna go out and purchase the equipment until we understand what the grant is gonna happen with the grant, they're not gonna cut us off.
Oh, I'm sure they're not going to cut us off.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess just to follow it up, we're kind of perhaps quite a little bit between two, I don't know, the agencies, but federal government type of thing. One that maybe, is this FCC or something? Is that the side of it that's doing the mandating or whatever? I mean, on one side, there may be some regulations or compelling reasons that we have to move on at a certain point in time. The other one is potential funding source also from the federal government that may not be moving quite that quickly. So I mean, you check out what Supervisor Gore says. Would it be prudent for us to kind of take a position and make a request that see if the issue, the regulatory requirement has any flexibility in it so that the funding aspect of it reaches closure before that shuts the thing down, or basically requires people to move along with it? I kind of butchered that, but I think that's the essence of what you're saying. We're kind of caught in a swinging door potentially between both of those.
The other issue you have to look at are folks that already have their equipment or are in place to purchase their equipment without waiting for any grants. They're gonna be ready to go. And once they put their equipment in place, they're not gonna wanna wait because then they won't have communications. This has to be a pretty coordinated effort.
Well, but they have communication now, and if they have their equipment now, or if they get their equipment in October or November, I mean, their old equipment isn't going anywhere. They can wait.
Well, if they go through the installation process and have their equipment installed, they won't have their old equipment in their vehicles
Well,
and stuff.
I mean, any installation process that is set up for the fourth quarter this year can be put on hold. A whole lot easier than I can come up with $120,000. It's not that there's people without communication with the status quo. I just think if there's a majority of the WCC members that are in a holding pattern because of this grant process,
I don't think it's the majority though.
either way, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
How could you find out? Would you be able to chat with the other chiefs
Oh, sure we can.
and see who's waiting?
But as a member, we voted to move ahead with this project, and we voted to stay on the timetable, they said. So we've already committed to the project. And now we're gonna go back and say, wait a minute.
Well, did we commit to the project based on the assumption we were gonna get the grant? Based on the assumption that we were gonna know the status of the grant?
Not at all.
Okay,
Many departments didn't even know that there was gonna be a grant available for it.
right, I understand.
Yeah, I just put this proposal together as an option. You know, like Mr. Fisher said, if you want to take it out of general reserves, that's another option too. It's totally the board's decision how they want to finance it.
When was the grant filed? Roughly.
February, March,
Okay.
somewhere in that time frame.
I would tend to support Mr. Fisher's idea that if we're earning less interest than we would be paying, it would not make sense to be borrowing money at a higher rate.
My only comment on it is if we authorize tonight to accept the loan, or at least the terms of it, there's nothing that says we have to take it. It's an option for us that if we find out that we aren't making as much interest, that we can use our own money. This allows us to have that option, so we don't have to delay things by a month or 2 months or whatever to agree to it. This is merely saying that we'll get a loan if we need it at a 1.5% interest rate, but we're not signing the document today saying that we're accepting the loan. If we determine we want to pay it out of our general fund, then that's fine, and we cancel the loan agreement.
But why do we have to make that decision tonight?
Well, I think as Chief Buchholz said, if this comes down the wire and we have to make a decision to call back the board to go through this again, could take a couple of months. We've already agreed to the project.
Right.
Now it's just a matter of how are we going to pay for it. Yes, we have enough money in our funds, and I agree that if we don't need to take the loan, let's not do it. But if we're making a better return, or if we found another option to make a better return, 1.5% is a pretty low interest rate.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Do we know, Dan, I know we've had discussions in the past that the cost of this never was clearly defined. I mean, and are we thinking it's $320,000? I mean, how firm is that number? When will we actually know what the real cost is, or do we?
It's pretty close to right on. We've, when we submitted for the grant, we had pretty close to exact price for equipment, and that's what the grant will cover, the equipment costs. And we've got estimates now for installation and programming, so that $320,000 is pretty close to accurate.
Okay, thank you.
We started out, we were at almost $400,000, our first estimates.
The other thing, Supervisor Dorr, with regarding acting on this quickly, is there's only $2 million in the total loan pool, so it is first come, first served.
So if we make that decision tonight to move forward with it, are we guaranteed to be in line for that? Or is it upon taking the money?
I believe it's upon signing an agreement with the county. That's why it kind of makes it nice to have the approval here ahead of time, because if you want to execute it, it takes a signature and it's done. You don't have to wait for a meeting to do it.
I kind of view this as a home equity loan like I have in my residence. You know, I have a floating loan that I can access at any time if I need it, but hopefully I don't. And the same with this, that's a pretty low interest rate, and it isn't going to be there for too long. I'm assuming that others are going to take up the county on it, and the money will be gone. So I think it's prudent we act on it tonight and at least have it as an option.
So Dan, are you saying even if we sign the document and we don't need it, we can back out? To your knowledge?
You just pay it all back at one time if you don't need it, and it's paid off right away.
Yeah, then I would support this too at 1.5%. If we don't, like Jim's saying, it's good insurance. If we need it, it's there. If we don't, we just don't take it.
So is the question on the table right now whether we're going to pass this resolution or not? Is that the question?
I guess that's a question for the town board to answer, if you need a resolution or not, or if you just need to approve to enter into a loan agreement. Some municipalities require resolution, some do not. That's a town board decision.
Because if we pass the resolution says, whereas the town board of the municipality, in order to provide funds for the purchase and upgrade of radio equipment, deems it necessary to secure a loan from Waukesha County. That doesn't say to me that after, if we pass this resolution, that doesn't say to me that we don't have to use it. If we pass this resolution, we've taken the loan. We can pay it back in 6 months, that's all fine and dandy. We can pay it back with 1.5. They're not gonna give it to us for 6 months for nothing.
They might. I mean,
Would you?
their whole purpose is to band everybody together to help pay for this type of equipment. If that addition to this resolution needs to be added, then I'm fine with that as well.
I'm also a little bit concerned about the loan agreement because it's very specific about the payment schedule. And the date of the loan closing, which is to be August 1st.
Yeah. We started to get into a discussion about, we don't have to use it, and that's all I'm kind of pertaining to, is that I don't know that that's an assumption we can make.
Those dates all change too. Like I said, this was just a draft, and the dates on there will change based on when the town enters into an agreement with the county. So if you don't enter into an agreement with the county until December, those dates change to December 1st.
An agreement for what?
To take the loan.
I'm having just a bit of difficulty maybe to help out. I mean, I looked at Mr. Macy's letter to us here and reading that quickly, but on item 2, on his letter of July 16th, for example, he says the documents you provided did not include the specific loan agreement or specific payback schedule or payment due dates or due amounts for the borrowing. Did he have this attachment A loan, the loan agreement type of thing that has date of loan closing and it's got payment due dates of August 15th, 2015, the 61/8, and it says payment due, estimated date August 15th, 2016, $60,090. I mean, that almost doesn't sound like he had that when he wrote his letter, and maybe I'm mistaken, but my concern would be, do we have anything in the document that addresses prepayment or the fact that we can opt out and say, no, we weren't interested in it? I mean, if we enter into this date of the loan closing, we basically get a check for $120,000 from Waukesha County, is that what we're saying? I mean, we
Correct.
Put
And
that in
that's
our
what I'm
bank.
saying though, if you choose that you don't want to enter into the loan with them until October, don't fill out the paperwork and submit it till October. The date's gonna start whatever date you agree with the county.
But at that point in time, there's a possibility that they've exhausted their availability of funds if other people have committed to it.
There is that
That's at risk.
The longer you wait, that potential exists. Could be the potential that hardly anybody asks for it, I don't know. At this point, he said that there were funds available, yeah.
From my perspective, if we've got cash sitting in the bank, and we do, I don't see any reason to encumber ourselves, even at low interest rates, but it's a rate higher than we're receiving on our cash. Is there a motion? Or would you like to table it until we get some more information?
Well, I'll make a motion that we table this until we find out whether or not we have to accept the loan, and if we do accept it, that the terms of prepaying it back, or I shouldn't say prepaying, of paying it back, we can pay it early without any type of a penalty.
Dan, would you check with the county then and find out, is there a prepayment penalty? Is there any dates that is there any time frame where we can't pay it back early? And do we have to, if we sign this, do we have to accept the monies?
Find out, sure.
I mean, in real simple terms, what we're trying to find out is, can we take the loan, and then if we decide not to use it at the last minute, and/or pay it back a day later, you know, is there any type of a fee or penalty or issue?
Supervisor Rack, is your motion to table to a date certain of the next meeting?
I'll make a motion to table the discussion on the countywide radio equipment loan until the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.